welcome back to Kottage-tek. As you can see, it's winter. We've had lots of snow, but that doesn't stop us from getting outdoors, enjoying a beer and a nice piece of cheese on the deck. Now, something we've never covered up at Kottage-tek is knives. Something pretty straightforward, city and country. Everybody's got knives in their kitchen. We've got all kinds of knives up here. We got big ones, little ones, sharp ones, dull ones, flat ones, pointy ones, impressive, scary ones. This is one of my favorites. This one cuts cheese real nice. It's important to keep good knives sharp, and a lot of people don't know how to sharpen a knife. You know, including us. We don't claim to be the best at everything, and this is something where we need a little help. So today we brought in a master knife sharpener, real pro. This guy knows how to sharpen a knife. He can put an edge on a knife, you can shave with it. So we brought him in. He's going to show us the tools to use, how to use them, how to sharpen a knife, and how to maintain that edge, so you don't have to sharpen them all the time. A sharp knife is better than a dull knife anytime. You're less likely to hurt yourself with a sharp one than a dull one. So while I sit here, have a beer, and cut the cheese, let's take a look at knives. Our first Kottage Know-how. Let's go inside.
So welcome. As Cliff mentioned, out sitting on the deck there, doing what he does best, which is drink beer. You mentioned we've got a master knife sharpener with us today. I'd like to introduce you to Walter Martindale. Now, I don't know anyone who sharpens knives and hones them to such a fine degree as Walter. And Walter and I have known each other quite a few years. We've lost touch because he's been out of country a lot, down in New Zealand and out west, in country but out west. And in fact, about the last time I was here and the last time my knives were sharp was about 20 years ago. So I'm looking forward to this. And he's the only person I know who sharpens knives as sharp, or possibly even sharper than my dad. And I grew up in a household with very sharp knives. Now, I watched my dad, but he never taught me how. So I've been using this type of standard sharpener, Walter, and at first it worked for a while, but it got to the point where no matter how much I used it, and I may not even been doing it right, the knives just weren't sharpening. I think I was dulling them. And I know my dad used a wetting stone, right? That's what you call it?
Whetstone,
oilstone. Or oilstone. But he never showed me how. But this was his. I pulled it out, and it didn't help me. So I went to the store, a restaurant supply store, and bought this for an incredible amount of money, which is supposed to be just the cat's meow for sharpening knives. And it did work. It did help. But I haven't got them down. So you're here. I wanted to invite you to teach me and others on the real way to sharpen a knife, because when you're cooking, or if you're a hunter, you're a fisherman, you're filleting fish, you've got to have a sharp knife. Yeah. And those serrated ones for filleting fish, no, they just don't work. They're saws, right?
Yeah.
So you taught me one thing, is that a couple ways to measure the sharpness of the knife is being able to cut a tomato, paper thin, or cutting paper. So show me how this knife works first, that I've been working on. And you want me to hold it?
No, okay.
And we can see what a great job I've done on this over the years and working on it. And
here's my knife. That's dragging a little bit, so it needs a little TLC, but it's in a little better shape.
All right, so that's what we're aiming for with this one.
Okay.
So show me how it's done.
All right. Well, there's all kinds of different tools. When you first get a knife, if you don't want to rub your finger along it, it's a good thing to do to inspect it and have a look to see if you can see light reflecting off the blade. And in this one, it's really ugly.
Now, when you say rub your finger along it, I have the, oh geez, don't, please.
I'm not going to do that with this one.
No, don't do this at home, folks.
No.
No,
I'm behind the camera and that scared me.
I wouldn't even try that with one of my dull knives.
No.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of tools you can use. This is an oilstone. You can buy water stones. They're for really fine stuff, and a lot of people who do wood crafting work use water stones. You can get them and Cliff's cheese cutter at Lee Valley Tools. They're our favorite place, and we don't get any money from them. But
now we've got a water stone, we've got an oil stone, but here at Kottage-tek, it's beer.
It's beer.
Do we have a beer stone?
You could probably use beer on a water stone, but not on an oil stone.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Cheers to that.
First thing you need to set up is a bit of newspaper, the Toronto Star, for example, to protect your tabletop. I don't want to rub this gritty stone on top of your glass. And you need something to clean your knife blade, like paper towels or just rags or something after you've spent some time sharpening it.
Or your jeans.
Or your jeans. 3-in-1 oil, could be motor oil, could be vegetable oil, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
These stones have a coarse side and a fine side. This is the coarse side that we're going to start with, and then afterwards we're going to use the fine side. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell which side it is, but if you look carefully, you can tell there's coarser grit on one side and
I've noticed that
on the other. Okay. So let's get this thing going. The oil is more, it's not for lubricating, it's for making sure that the stone doesn't clog with the steel particles that you're going to wear off the edge of this knife. So you can get it spread around. And the idea is to try to shave a little bit of stone off the top by holding the edge of the back edge of the blade approximately 20 degrees up from the stone. And then try to shave a piece of stone off.
Now you're not literally trying to shave a piece of stone off.
You're not going to, but that's a description of how you would think about what you're doing. It's like you're trying to shave. It's about the angle you would use to shave hair off your arm or your face.
Yeah, well, I haven't done that either. But I can see myself needing a lot of plastic surgery if I do some of the things you're suggesting.
You move the knife along the stone as if you're trying to shave a little bit of stone off the top, and you make sure that the edge has got got some oil on it while you're doing it.
Now, in terms of that edge or the angle to keep the edge going, when I bought this, I asked the guy at the store about the stones, and he actually admitted, he said, "This is great. This is one of the best you can get, but as far as he's concerned, the stone's still the way to go if you want to get really sharp."
Yeah.
And he had said on the angle, basically if you put an old matchbook underneath, that would give you about the right angle. Would you tend to agree with that?
Yeah, probably.
Just help those people who aren't visually, geometrically,
bit of a guide, yeah.
Don't know what 20 degrees looks like.
Tip of your finger, something like that, but then you don't want to rub your finger along the top of the stone. So, like these things are good, but they can't repair a blade. If you chip a blade, you can't do anything about it. If there was a divot out of this thing, you couldn't use this to sharpen it. It would make the divot nice and sharp, and you'd eventually have one of those serrated type blades. Okay. But it takes a while because you have to wear the steel down to the point where it's at the at the divot. But that'll eventually repair your blade. Okay, you want to have a try at that?
Now, at the beginning, when you were looking at it, you actually saw some nicks and stuff, did you? Okay, so am I rotating it with my wrist or just
sort of
sliding it across?
Slide it along.
This is where you don't want to slip, right?
Right.
This stone's not going to move on you, eh?
Hope not.
So I want to cover the whole blade as I go across. I still feel like my fingers are a target, yeah. Now, I notice as I'm getting to the end, if I keep it flat, I've got a gap here.
Yeah.
So I've got to.
You want to try and
Rotate
keep
a
as
little
much
bit.
blade on the steel as you can while you're doing it.
Okay. All right. Now, how long do we have to do this for?
Till it's sharp. And that can be that can vary. And
So at some point, this knife just says, "Hey, I'm sharp."
no, you got to check it every so often. So we'll do that.
Okay.
See how we're progressing. Give it a bit of a wipe. Careful, you don't want to push down while you're doing that because you're going to get messy. If you're feeling nervous about it, you can wipe it like that so you're not pulling the knife into your fingers. And that's getting there. It's still...
No blood. It's not sharp enough.
No.
That's how we
There's
tell,
still some flats on there.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing you can tell, if you look at the edge, you can see that there's a nice smoothish.
Okay, these have got to come off to do this.
There's a smooth sort of land appearing that's
Mhm.
fairly straight on both sides of the blade, and you can tell if your angles are about the same on both sides
Okay.
by the width of this. If this
Yeah.
is wider on one side than the other.
So in large scale, you've got the sides of the knife coming up, and you've got a bit of a.
Yeah, and
temper
we're
whatever
looking
way.
at that angled bit
Okay.
right now to see how wide it is. Because if one side's like this and the other side's like that, it's going to have a funny curve. And if you're really fussy, it might cut crooked. But that's getting really
Okay.
fussy.
Well, I'll let you keep going because it'll probably get done a lot faster.
Okay, it's almost
Yeah.
there actually. I'm gonna up the force a little.
Strokes it with a little more authority than I do.
Well, I want to get this done. It takes a while, and this is one of those things you have to be patient while you're doing it. And I've been doing this since I was about 10, so
I don't want to know what you were doing in your early teens. No, thank you.
Dad showed me how.
Yeah.
Dad was an instructor of gunnery in the military. He was taught people how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
How are we doing? Oh, we're getting there. I'm gonna flip it
Okay.
over.
Ah. So can I just feel this so I get the feel of it? And-
Yep, careful.
Okay. So it's just starting to grab. I'm very light, and I can feel the tip starting to grab.
Yeah, but I can
I
see
think it-
I can see the flat still up here. I haven't
Mhm.
got to that.
Okay.
So if you've got a really bad spot on the knife and you need to work quickly, you can spend some time doing that sort of thing on one particular part.
And we talked about flat on the knife. This point where it comes together isn't there, right? It kind of.
Mushed off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Sort of
Yeah.
you've done something intelligent like using a sharp edged knife on a ceramic bowl.
Or you've just been cutting food for
A long
for
time.
20 years waiting for your friend to come back from New Zealand to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I wasn't there for 20 years. But and it's if you're just learning how to do this, it's a good idea to practice with not your fanciest knife. Learn how to get a not so great knife sharp, and then
And I have what I believe are some good knives. My dad always had quality steel. That's one of the
Yeah.
things he looked for. He had Henkel's and.
yeah. Well, this was a Canadian Tire knife, right? Cuisine de France.
So if we can get this one really sharp. Now the difference, what's the difference? You get this one sharp versus say a high grade, high end Henkel. And will the Henkel hold its sharpness longer, or can you make it sharper?
The better knives should hold their edge longer. They take more work because the steel's harder.
Mm-hmm.
The harder the steel is, the more
Yeah.
it takes to wear it off. Basically, because what I'm doing here is I'm wearing off a little bit of steel every time I swipe it along on the stone, and that's.
So you don't
Well,
want
we have
to
to go
do this too often because eventually you'll wear your knife down.
Yeah,
right?
it'll take a while. I've been sharpening this thing over, I think I've had it for 10 years now, and you're almost to the point where that notch is
Right.
gone.
Mm-hmm. And again, this isn't something you do every time you want to sharpen the knife, right?
Well,
This
no.
is when it starts getting,
This is when it needs it.
yeah, gets to the point where, yeah, it's a little duller than you want, and
This is repair.
the other stuff isn't working.
In between sharpenings, you can use a steel. And I'll
Okay.
show you how to use a steel very quickly. And
Okay.
because there's nothing really to it. You just have to be careful. This is now getting to be something that you need to be careful with. Okay. Oh, I can't see any edge there. Ooh.
No blood? A few more tries on the stone? Let's see. Okay, so it really kind of grabs. So we're ready for the paper test?
Well, let's try
Let's see where we're at. You want a new piece there? Oh, all right. Love it. That is a huge improvement. So here, I brought the other test.
Okay.
No.
I don't know if we're up to this one yet.
Well, let's give it a try. Now the tomato's been sliced kind of all over.
I
Let's see what happens.
saw one on the internet where a guy laid a tomato down like that and sliced it without holding on to it.
Now, isn't that great? Not a serrated knife.
So this isn't doing as well as that other one did.
But that's still pretty amazing. And
One sharp knife.
you know, Deb sliced a tomato with one of those razor knives, or serrated knives, or it might have been one of her dull ones.
Yeah.
I think it was her dull one.
Whatever, yeah.
And I teased her because I said, I really wanted a slice of tomato on my sandwich, not salsa. But this is amazing. This is really amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so now that we've got this, work of art here, when do we use this? Because I've used this, and my understanding is use this really to keep it sharp over time.
Yeah, that's sort of a maintenance tool. If you're using your knife a lot, you probably want to give it a quick touch up with the steel before every big carving event. So if you're going to be doing a lot of cooking, probably grab the steel, the knife, give it a few quick of these,
and pretty
away
much
you go.
Pretty much with every use. Then you're talking.
Yeah.
I mean, not if you happen to slice a pickle, but every time you do a meal where you're actually going to be using.
Yeah, if you're going to be doing a fair amount of cutting, like you're preparing big salads and then cutting up a whole lot of meat, and you clean up between them, of course. But you'd probably want to give it a bit of a stoning or steel.
Now I noticed that you've got the knife again at an angle.
Yeah.
It's like a file, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a file, only turned on end. Because the file cut marks are this way instead of across. If you were going on a steel or on here, you clamp this in a vise and go. That's how you do the file. If it was really bad.
But so against that, the steel or the file, what's the angle? The same as you use on the stone?
I think it should be the same because you're trying to. With the stone, we've made a couple of flat spots that are at an angle here, right? And there's one here and there, and they form this sort of
that V,
40-ish degree
that we talked about.
V, yeah, and that edge is on top of that. So we want to try and match the flat spots on here, and rather than making it like that by holding the edge too steeply, or like if the knife's like that and we've got this flat spot carved on here, we don't want to spend time rounding that off. We want to spend time sharpening that so the tip has a little bit worn off each side of it rather than wearing off the corners here.
So that's one of the things I think I was doing wrong. I was think I've been keeping it too flat
Yeah.
to the steel
Okay.
because I'm afraid that I'm going to dull it. And you're actually driving the sharp edge of the knife down a piece of steel. My logic says dulls the knife.
Well, that's what we're doing here too. Driving the sharp edge of the knife. Well, it used to be
Right.
dull. The sharp edge of the knife down the stone to basically
And
file away a little bit of
in
steel.
effect, you are doing that, or
Yeah.
you would if you had the wrong angle, but
Yeah.
it's to take that steel away to hone it.
You're wearing away a small amount of steel each time you do this, and because it's going. This thing cuts little lines into the steel of this knife.
Because it's a grit.
Yeah,
Okay.
and this sort of rubs them flat, so it becomes a smoother edge.
Now, I
And-
mentioned my dad had very sharp knives as well,
Mhm.
and yet he went the other way.
Like this.
Yes.
Well, I could see that working, but the problem is every time you go like this, you're rubbing the steel over this way, and you're dragging. If you're dragging any metal, you're dragging it over this way, so you're getting a burr that way,
Mm-hmm.
and then you drag it this way, and you get a burr this way, and
Okay.
you can feel. I don't have a burr. You can feel the burr by feeling when you go this way against the
Mhm.
edge of the blade. You can feel that there's a bit of a burr there, and I don't have that here, but.
So how long would you do that for?
Well, if the knife is sharp to start with, you don't need to do very much. And then you can work.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a template for that class.
Yeah.
Huh?
We have a template for that class.
Okay.
And you do have to be careful with sharp knives.
Yeah. But if it's gone dull enough that this isn't doing it in about 8 or 9 strokes,
Mhm.
5 on each side or so, then you need to go back to stone.
Okay. Now the steel in this, I would assume, is important too. You want to get a high quality one of these, would you not, or you just wear down the file?
Probably. I have a steel one that my parents owned, but I also have one made out of ceramic,
Mm-hmm.
and that you give it a wash and it comes clean, and it's really fine. It gives a really fine edge. But this does a very good job too, as we can confirm again. Sorry, shouldn't be holding it, but
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Wow, I'm looking forward to using that.
yeah.
Now, on this deal, I just wanted to check one thing too. I've got this big knife, right?
Mm-hmm.
And big carving knife. And when you're doing the smaller one, you come across, but this is a long stretch. Can you rotate it in, or do you do it this way to, get
I would do
the
it
full
that way.
blade?
Yeah.
Still keep coming down and kind of draw across.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Well,
was curious about that because of the length. It's got a lot more blade to work with.
that's actually Phil. I've seen people do that.
Yeah.
I get worried about slipping off and hitting your finger.
Yes.
That's what this is there for, is
Mhm.
sort of to prevent it. But
Some of them actually have a bigger shield.
yeah, but I wouldn't want to do that. So I keep
Okay.
about the same angle all the time so that I don't slip off the end. Some people like to do that, but then you've got to be fussy. Some people do this, which
Yeah.
I don't know.
They're afraid of.
Worried about cutting themselves, I guess. The good thing about a sharp knife, though, is that you don't have to use a lot of force to cut through things.
Mhm.
That's, and there I am cutting onto a plate, which isn't good.
Well, and a sharp knife is what I think I mentioned before. It's slicing things as opposed to the serrated knives, which in effect I might think of it as sawing.
Well, the serrated knives have got a whole bunch of little curved,
Mhm.
really sharp blades, and they sort of, yes, they're sort of sawing, but they're also slicing at different angles all the time. So
Mhm.
they're really good in wet situations, like if you're cutting a rope that's wet or a seat
Yeah.
belt that's wet. If you're underwater trying to cut something, apparently these don't do as well, but a serrated blade
Mm-hmm.
does a very good job of that.
Okay.
That's in good shape.
Now, this that I spent a fair amount of money on,
Mm-hmm.
and this is from a high-end restaurant supply store.
Mm-hmm.
It has, when you look at it, the two elements. It's got like a grinding stone, and they're like little wheels that come together.
Yeah.
And then it has a ceramic.
Mm-hmm.
So this effectively models the stone and this, does it not?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. If you look really carefully at this, you can see that there's wheels in there, and they're sort of like that, and they I'm not very good at this interaction thing, but they join like that.
Well,
and
yeah,
form
because they're going to have an arc to them. It's two
Yeah.
arcs coming together, not
Yeah.
straight lines.
So what this is going to do in effect is make a hollow grind. It's
Mhm.
going to carve a little bit of metal out like that on the knife, at the tip of the knife, instead
Is-
of straight like we're making here.
Is that better, worse, or just different?
It's possibly better, possibly just different. I'm not really sure. This knife's in reasonably good shape. You don't need to use a lot of force. I believe this is carbide in the first one and ceramic in the other for the fine work. And you drag it across carefully. You don't need. I don't believe you need to use a lot of force, and then switch up.
The salesman who sold it to me
Yeah.
said exactly that. He said very little force, almost just the weight of the knife itself.
Yeah.
Draw it across 3 times on the one and 3 times on the other. And for maintenance, just use this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked him about using a whetstone or oilstone, and he said, yeah, you know what, his favorite still to get them really sharp
Mm-hmm.
is to go here.
Yeah.
This is amazing, but I'd point out my knives are so dull that I used one of my other knives, and I tried to sharpen it on this, and I went through the thing about 6 times,
Mm-hmm.
and it still wasn't sharp. And I mean, what I'm learning today is that's the sign
You need a stone.
to go to the stone. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that's amazing. One thing, you always hear it, and Cliff mentioned it outside when he brought in the topic, that a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife. And yet, I'll tell you, these are so sharp, I have to warn people
Mm-hmm.
to use them now because they're not used to them, and they are. I mean, you can do
Oh,
real
you could,
damage here.
You could do real damage. One of the things I think, and I don't know this for sure because I've never really worked with dull knives, but I think people who are accustomed to using dull knives when they're cutting fine stuff use their finger as a guide for the knife onto the food.
Yeah, and maybe not straight on the edge of the blade, but
Yeah,
or on the
and-
tip, but on the edge of the.
Like I've
The knife and-
seen people sort of going cut, and they forget that this thing is sharp, and they put their finger underneath
Yeah.
it, and then all of a sudden the finger's in the salad, and it's
Yeah.
just ugh. And they're screaming.
So how should you? I've used kind of my knuckles and
knuckles
bend
work.
those fingers in.
Knuckles work. Bend the fingers in, and pay attention to what you're doing. Don't be off here while you're hacking away at some
Yeah.
food because it just takes a moment's slip, and you're leaking red stuff.
Yeah, but the joy of working with a sharp knife, it's great.
Yeah,
Walter, thank you very much.
great.
We all
Thank you very
now
much.
know how to sharpen a knife to a level of perfection.
That's the way to go.
Well, there you have it, boys and girls. How to sharpen a knife the professional way. Now at the cottage, not only do we live on the bleeding edge of technology, we can grind a new one when we need to as well. So, yep, I know, more snow. What else this year? So anyway, thanks for coming to Kottage Tech. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.